Hey guys, so in this video we are going to talk about different types of websites and some of the stuff that you should think about before you make one or the other. So let's get into it. So basically what we're going to cover is when do we want to build an SPA or single page application, and when do we want to build a typical website, and how to think about the different trade-offs. So we're just going to walk through the normal cases. I'm not saying that this is the only way that you can build websites, but each of these steps that we're going to walk through is going to be something that is very common. Let's call it that. There are a few strategies for how to build a website. So the main ways that you build a website is usually, okay, you have a static website of some sort, or you might have a templated website where you do something that we call, you may recognize this as server-side rendering. And then you might have a website that is a half and half type of thing, which is also a very common thing, where you have some, it might be a static website, or it might be a server-side rendered or a templated website with some type of JavaScript components. And then finally you actually have the full-fledged SPA, which is all the rage these days and everybody's talking about them. Now what I don't like about that is that there are some people who want to make it seem as if SPAs is the only thing that matters. And that is so far from the truth. The reality of the web is that most websites are using one of the previous flavors. Either it's a static website, or it's a templated website, or it's a half and half, where there are some JavaScript elements and most of the other stuff is just HTML and CSS. So what I want in this video is for us to just have a mental walkthrough of some of the considerations that you should keep with you. So let's talk about the static websites first and foremost. So a static website is by far the simplest and most performant solution that you can possibly have. You heard it here first. This is the thing that if I could go back in time and only be forced to change one thing, or be able to just change one thing, I would have stated that this is the way the web was meant to work. It is the best thing for everybody, if you can get away with it. Now the problem is that's not sustainable, and we're going to walk through why. So a static website is a very simple thing. All it is that it's basically just text, CSS, and HTML. That's all it is. There's no dynamic content or anything like that going on the page. So basically this makes it a perfect fit for these sorts of applications. You might want to have a blog. Now the reason why I think this is a good fit for a blog is that you can basically just add your text into your markup and then add a few break lines for spaces and stuff like that, or for line breaks. You might have an event website where you're just showing this cool thing is happening over here at that and that time, and the information never changes. You're just going to pull down the website once the event is done. So you want to just make it really beautiful and easy to read. A wiki of a page, or a FAQ type of website is also it's a good fit for this, because it's the same information. You very rarely change it, and it's just something, it's like a book. You just read it. There is no logic involved really into it, right? An image gallery can also be a very nice fit for this, where you have a bunch of images and you just want to show them on the page, and then that's pretty much it. So I want you to understand this. I don't want you to think that static websites are bad, because they're the best damn thing there is. They are the best of the best. This is the stuff that Google and Facebook and all your super companies would have used if it was possible, because it is the best, most performant thing that you can have. Problem is, it's not going to scale, and I'm going to explain why. So this is my blog. Now let's actually look at the endpoint. So I have this Express app here. We're going to walk through all of this stuff here, because basically all this is a few, it's just a demo application to showcase the different types of websites. So here I have my blog, and I have a bunch of blog posts. So let's go to /blog. And here is my amazing blog. It looks absolutely gorgeous, and this is a static website. All it is, what just happened literally, was that I went to this endpoint right here, and it read this file. And this file is just some hard-coded HTML with some hard-coded values. This is all it is. This is the entire file. This is the whole story. It is the most performant thing that you can possibly imagine. and the simplest thing as well. The problem with it is, of course, that it's not going to scale. So if I click here, I go to one of the blog posts, I can go back, and I can go to the other blog post. This is perfect. If you can just get away with this, just go for it. And this is the other endpoint. So all this is basically, you take a post ID of some sort, and as you can see here, all it's going to do is that it's going to look for an HTML file that actually matches to that ID or that post. So all I have to do, this is why I like it as a blog, you just have to copy paste pretty much the previous HTML here, and then you can just add your information in, and then you can add another post, and then another one, and then another one. It's very easy. Like, none of the content needs to previous content needs to change all that much, and it's so simple, right? Now the problem why this isn't with this is that it's not going to scale for a system that changes very frequently, because one part of it is that I have just hard-coded all of this information, which is perfect for a blog, but it's not very good for like an e-commerce website or something like that, where you might have thousands and thousands of products that get updated and changed very frequently, because you can't go into like 1,000 HTML documents and then just manually change this information if something changes. So that's a big problem. But in terms of performance, this is the best thing, because there's two factors to it: performance on the client side and performance on the server side. The server side and the client side in terms of performance are equal here, the complexity level and the load, because when you're loading up an HTML document like this, it is going to load instantaneously pretty much, because what's virtually happening is that I'm getting this information here over the network immediately. So if I now, let's pull that down to a slow 3G here, there's going to be a slight delay, and then I'm going to get that document immediately. You don't even notice the delay, because it is that quick. It's that quick. As soon as the HTML hits the page, the only thing that it's going to wait for is the CSS file, and you could even inline that CSS to make this even faster. So performance-wise, client side, this is great, and server side, it's also great, because I don't have to do any extra processing. It's just a file. That's it. Cool. Let's move on. Let's talk about HTML templating. So server-side rendering, or HTML templating, depending on what you want to call it, is very similar to what we just did. The thing that we just did was static HTML, or a static website, but this is a little bit more dynamic. Here we have a scenario where information might change very frequently, or I might have so much information that it's impossible to maintain all that information in just a bunch of files, because as you can imagine, if I have maybe a handful of blog posts, if I wanted to change this header here and just update it with a few more links, well, it's easier for me to just copy paste this and then go to the next file here and copy paste that, and like just kind of repeat that process. But if you have thousands and thousands and thousands of these things, it's gonna get really messy. It's gonna take too long. So that's when templating comes in. And a template is just an intermediary. You can think of it as code. It's like you have a file that represents some type of code that knows how to generate HTML from that code. That's all it is. And that's what a template in essence does. So a templating solution is perfect for web shops, where you, as I was saying, you might have a main product page of some sort with a lot of nice products, and then you might have a bunch of product pages where you can go to each individual product. Or a learning platform is the same sort of thing. You might have a bunch of courses that you're offering, and then you can go to specific course pages to see them. Or maybe an admin tool where you might have people who administrate different things in your system, and they need to change and update information and update products and stuff like that. This is a perfect solution for that. So let's look at that endpoint. So I've created this shop endpoint here and a shop/product ID endpoint. So let's go to my shop. Let's go and look at that. Oh, I'm still on a slow 3G. So let's change that later, because I have an agenda with this, as you can probably imagine. So look at all these lovely ladies in lovely clothes. So this is my shop, and this is it's from your perspective, it's basically the same thing. There is one main difference that we're going to look at. So then I can go to one specific product, and here's a little comment section here where I can add some awesome stuff and say, oh, this is amazing, cool. That's the entire system, right? Or this is the whole thing, right? Now, if we go on the server side though, because what the experience for the user is identical to a static website, but with one difference, and that is that this is not just a file. It's not just a static HTML file, because if we have a look at this thing here, there's a difference here. So this is sending a file, and this is called render or rendering. And what does that mean? Well, it basically means that I have this pug file here, which this is, as you can see, this is not HTML. This is a pug format. It's the templating engine's format for rendering out HTML. So here I have specified a bunch of dynamic information that when I run it through the render function, it's going to spit out HTML on the other side. And to prove that to you, let's just look at what's actually sent over the wire here. So the raw response here, as you can see here, in the side menu here, this is just HTML. This HTML came from this. I hope that's super clear to you. This thing here was converted into this. That's all that's going on here. So what's actually happening is that I have this thing called include, which is including a header, which, as I was saying earlier, let's say a header is a very common thing that changes a lot. From my experience, it's very often that people change different information and stuff like that. So I extracted out this common section of my template here into a partial. And this thing here is just the header section of that HTML. And what's cool about that is that now in my shop product, which is just the individual place where we actually see the product itself, I can include this header here, and I can include this header here. So no duplication. I keep things dry, which is super nice. And if this is going to scale to like a lot of pages, as you see, I only have one template. Even if there's a million products, I only have to ever update one document because it's all taken care of from this document, as opposed to the static website where I would have to go to each individual document. See, there are other ways you could solve this, though. You could use pre-rendering and other things to do this, but that's a different sort of video. Anywho, after that, I just iterate through the products in my products array, and then I just create one list element with the link and an image. And that's the whole story. That's how I take care of these different products. We can, for the sake of completeness, I suppose, just have a look at my products over here. So this is all it is. It's just a bunch of links and some random IDs that I create when I require this file. And then I have the shop product endpoint here, which does the same thing. It just goes to this template instead, and then it goes and finds the specific product that I'm visiting and renders out this page instead. And that's the whole story. This is really all there is to it. So from a performance perspective, this is not as good as a static website, but from a maintenance perspective, from a developer maintenance perspective, it's much better. There's less time going into dealing with updating things and so forth, and I can keep things very nice and dry, which is perfect for my personal productivity. But on the server, I have to account for the fact that now when when someone comes here and they kind of go, oh, I want to visit this page, then the server has to do some extra processing. In this scenario, this is not a problem because this is such a small application. But as you can imagine, for a really large system with maybe hundreds of thousands, if not millions of users, these things, they start to add up. You can solve this with pre-rendering, but as I said, I could. That's a different sort of video. But I could remove this step of rendering on every request and just move it into static files if I had a very easy way of doing that. But it's not a perfect use case, so I recommend you go and watch. I think I have another video on this topic as well, where we talk about pre-rendering and what that is all about. All right, so let's talk about the third step, the third case here, which is website with JavaScript components. Now, this is something that some people may, I'm not saying frown upon, but it's something that used to be the thing. It used to be the sex of the internet, and it still is the main thing that is going on websites. But people act as SPAs are all the rage, and it's the only thing around, right? But the reality is that this is actually much, much better from many perspectives, performance being one of those perspectives. And if you look at a quote from React, for example, like their website, they have actually stated this themselves, that React was designed with the intention of being something like this, where you can gradually gradually add things to your personal website or to your company website. You can add React in without having to switch out all the other stuff. You can build the whole thing in React, but you don't have to. It doesn't actually fit every use case. It wasn't even designed to be that sort of solution. It can be, and it does it really well, but it wasn't the intention. Now, let's have a look at my this page here again. Let's take a look at this lady here. And this comment section here. As you can imagine, whenever I submit this, notice now that I submit that and there was no page refresh, which indicates that, hey, this is actually JavaScript, because otherwise if I'm submitting a form like this all over the place, it would have reloaded the page, which is fairly standard, but that's not what I'm doing. I'm actually doing this exact thing that this step is all about. I'm combining my JavaScript with just a widget on my website, which is a rendered page. So from a performance perspective, this is actually very, very efficient, because I don't need my entire website to be a SPA. This is a static website. There's nothing fancy going on here. The only thing that is dynamic is this section here. And even this section here has a bit of a problem. Let me show you why. Let's take a refresh and let's have a look at this page here. Let's move that down to a slow 3G and let's refresh. So after a little while, you'll see that the page is there, the image is there, and we're waiting and we're waiting and we're waiting and we wait and we wait, and we're gonna sit here and wait for quite some time. And at some point, I hope our pain and misery will be over, because all we really want is to get to that comment section, right? That's what we want. We don't care about this. The comment section is the important part. And there it is. So what just happened? Well, what just happened was that you saw the main problem with having an unperformant JavaScript application. The time it takes for the browser to show something meaningful to the user in HTML and plain CSS is a fraction of the time it's going to take to build it with JavaScript. Because if you have a fairly substantial bundle, such as this, which is all of React and like all the stuff that I need in order to do this, then that's going to take a while to go over the network. And honest to God, what's happening is basically that the CSS, so the HTML is going to start being parsed through by the browser, and then we're going to go to this header section here, the head section, and then it's going to hit this CSS file. I could inline all of this style as well if I wanted to make this network call go even faster, and then all of the nice fonts and like the colors and all that good stuff, that's going to go on the web page as soon as this is done, and then it's going to continue. It's going to get all the way to down here before it actually starts loading the JavaScript. And then it's going to go and fetch it. And if there's a lot of JavaScript, this whole page is going to look like it's done until, but it's not done, because until the JavaScript is actually there, well, there's no way to add a comment. So if you only care about this section, it's fine. But if you care about this section, you're going to have to wait. So had this been HTML and just a normal form, well, then this would have been loaded as quickly as the rest of the page. I hope that makes sense to you. So from a performance perspective, JavaScript is actually not a great thing if you're looking to give the user the fastest meaningful paint, like first meaningful paint as we call it. If you want that to go as fast as possible, JavaScript is a very non-ideal way of doing that. So if you have a look at a full-fledged SPA, let's look at my SPA. This is my Hello World application. Let's throttle that down. Let's actually look at that just to show you that I'm not joking around. This thing here is this is the Hello World application that you're seeing. This is now React DOM, and React Router DOM. So this is the whole thing. This is my comments widget. So this is the widget. It's not super meaningful, important what the code is doing here. I'm just going to scroll through it really quickly, but it's that little widget that you saw. So notice that this widget, it's not directly creating an entire app. It's just a single React component that I'm bootstrapping to the comments section. Now I could have done this all in vanilla JavaScript to keep down the load time, but I just want to highlight that some widgets and some JavaScript elements are actually so complicated that it is warranted to use an entire library, or like a big library like React, to actually deal with it, because it's actually that complicated to structure it. Doing everything in vanilla JavaScript is an option, but you should also know that it is very complicated to do so. So for a lot of people, this would be a preferred solution as opposed to if you're like a JavaScript master and can do everything in vanilla JavaScript. But anywho, so when I have this SPA here, like I'm loading it, and on my local laptop, it's fairly quick. As you can see, there's a slight, you might not see it, but there's a slight delay to, like, the page goes blue and then I see the text straight after, and that is the rendering part, where first we're loading the page, we're fetching the JavaScript bundle, and then the JavaScript needs to execute, and then it occupies the page for me. Let's just do this. Let's do a slow 3G on that one. So let's see how that works for us. So it's loading, it's loading, it's loading. Let's go over here. Let's do a slow 3G on this one. So nothing, nothing, nothing. This page is already done, it looks like, pretty much. Nothing, nothing, nothing. This page has been done for quite some time now. Still nothing. Wow. There it came. There it was. Here it is. Wow. And the only thing that we are waiting on this page is that little section down there. That's the only thing we were waiting for. Had the comment section not been there, this page would have been done ages before this page. And this thing here is actually fetching more, like it's fetching an image and like all the other this other stuff that's going on than this page. Like they are fetching the same amount of information, more or less, like this page, because this is actually loading React as well. It's almost fetching the same amount of JavaScript as this page, and all this is doing is saying, well, hello world. It's not completely true, but I hope that this illustrates my point. What I'm saying is that the first meaningful paint and performance is not something that SPAs do all that well. What SPAs are really kick-ass at, though, are when you're making things like this. When you're dealing with a very dynamic type of application, let's say that you're creating an email client, something like, I don't know, like Gmail, or similar sorts of application where the expectation of the user is to stay on the same page and just have a productivity tool, then it's perfect. Or maybe an online calendar, some type of analytics platform where you're dealing with a lot of different metrics and stuff like that. Or maybe an online IDE, something like that, where the expectation is that the page should in many cases behave like a native application would on your desktop. This is when SPAs kick ass. Like, this is when they are the best. This is the thing that they are superior at solving, because it's what they're designed to really solve for us. To give a native feeling application type of experience on the web. But most times, that's not what you're building. Most of the time you're building one of these other things where it's just it's a standard HTML website. It's a standard website type of experience, right? And then just adding a sprinkle here and there of JavaScript to enhance your experience with some elements that may be dynamic is the way to go. So what I want you to take away from this is that from a performance perspective, the closer you can get to a static website, the better. In terms of deployment and all this stuff, if you can get away with this, it's the best thing for you. It's going to give you the fastest loading website, and it's going to give you the simplest possible workflow, as long as you're dealing with fairly small amounts of data and not a lot of changes. HTML templating is the next step, where you trade a little bit of performance in order to get a personal workflow that is much simpler, so that the development process is quicker. And if you're unless you are truly building like a true SPA type of application, which is like where the whole experience should pretty much be a native feeling application, well, then just add a sprinkle of JavaScript for those components that are a little bit more complicated to build in CSS and HTML. Because as I was showing with the comments widget, the expectation from the user is that they immediately see their comments. But I could have just as easily said, well, no, you know what? I'm just going to make this an HTML form, and I'm just going to reload the page every time somebody posts something. That could have been acceptable, depending on what type of user experience I'm going for. But you should consider these things when you're reaching for a solution. Don't just jump on the bandwagon with SPAs and just build them every single time. Really think it through, because I can promise you, this is not a silver bullet. It's perfect for its use case. It's amazing to use an SPA in the right situation. But if you're doing it in the wrong situation, you're just creating a bunch of extra work for yourself, and actually, most likely, creating a worse experience for your users. So think about these things before you make the choice to go with one solution over another. Have a great day.